let's get started. Contrary to our popular trend that we're following now, we're not gonna start this episode with our favorite Korean people phrases. I think I was debating what to do for this opening bit, but I have a hypothetical rich person question. So, okay, if you had, let's say, $1 million and you have 1 day to spend it, what would you spend it on? So rules are, you have to spend it. You can't save the money. So after 24 hours, the money goes away, but anything that you bought stays.
It's $1 million with tax. So
no, $1 million straight up.
Straight up. Hey man, lotteries.
What tax would there be?
No, it'd be lotteries like
Sujay's giving you the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you taxing me?
$1 million after 1 day is gone. What would you spend it on?
I know my answer.
All right, go.
Real estate.
Dude, yeah, actually, there's a right answer.
I was thinking about real estate, but could you buy real estate in a day?
For sure.
Buy anything.
Can you
buy
walk?
land
Can you
somewhere.
walk into a house and be like, I want to buy this house?
You probably couldn't buy a house, but you can buy land.
Yeah.
I could buy an island.
Yeah,
would
real
the
estate.
paperwork go in a day?
Probably not a whole
You
island,
can just
but
buy more than.
If you
buy,
have
I
24
could probably
hours,
buy half
buy
of
an
the
island off of Saudi Arabia. Those are
Why Saudi Arabia?
No, but see, you only have a
for the
day,
oil?
so
Yeah, but
you'd have
there's
to
land in the
I would
Western
buy-
Sea and stuff. People their signs are just 2,000 per acre. Just call this number.
You could get that done in a day, yeah.
Or an
I feel
actual
like
house.
I feel like real estate is. What about you put it all on Robinhood?
No.
Yeah,
No, that's what
You could buy
that's what I was gonna
stocks.
say, yeah.
Ooh.
Just a payoff.
I feel like stocks and houses are the real estate is the right answer.
I guess I'm being idealistic. I would like to just buy plane tickets, just spaced out over time, trips to places, a bunch of them, and then.
But you couldn't put it in a
But-
bank account or something.
Huh?
How would you you just buy plane tickets?
Yeah.
How far ahead can you buy plane?
I have no idea.
But what if something happened during that time period and you couldn't?
You could just give it to someone else.
Yeah, I guess so.
Ask
True.
them for.
If I wanted to spoil myself, I'd buy one of those first class
Yeah.
Emirates.
Yo, but those
flights.
are 10K,
Yeah.
I think. The big, the most nice.
Buy
What do you
10
mean?
of
I've got
them.
$1 million.
Yeah,
500
that's
of
true.
them.
I guess. Yeah, I was like,
pay off for school.
yeah,
And then
buy a
just
new
put the rest
Xbox.
put the rest in the stocks, and then whenever you need it, you just sell stocks and you just get it
Yeah,
back.
can you put it in your bank
That's
account?
it.
No, you can't save it. That was the.
Oh, but it's
Yeah, I'll
growing
put it in my
anyway.
bank account.
What would you
That's the
say?
real
I'll
right
buy
answer.
a bank account with $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I just go to an IKEA and go ham.
What
You
the?
could buy the entire
You could
store.
probably
I
buy
don't have
that.
anywhere to
You
put
would
it.
not be able to buy a store and
Nike.
$1 million. You see how much furniture they
Just
Yeah,
bring everything
just
in there.
Or go to a Best Buy.
Buy
and go
all
ham.
their-
Probably buy
jelly
we
cookies.
probably buy a big ass TV maybe.
For $1 million.
For
You could buy
$1
lot of big ass
million.
TVs.
I would buy a
TV.
$1 million TV.
What the hell?
You could for sure buy a movie theater for I don't know. You could buy a movie
projector
not
screen.
not an actual an
projector,
in-home
yeah.
movie theater.
You could probably build a room. Yeah.
for less than $1 million.
Okay, I'm about to
Damn.
do that. 1 second.
Cool.
Alright, this is overrated. Alright, I'm Sujay.
I'm
Girish.
Kellyanne.
Oh.
Fuck me.
Do that again.
I'm Girish.
Am I doing this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go.
I'm Kellyanne.
I'm Brian.
I'm Will.
And today we're doing Parasite. So this movie was our where are you category is very easy because we were all watched this for the first time together. This movie wasn't even on my radar. I had never heard of it before, and Kellyanne suggested it. So props to her for.
Thank you.
You said your parents watched it. How did they find out about it?
Yeah, my whole family did. I don't know how they found out about it. They're just, my dad's super into movies and my sister is, so I think that it was probably on a lot of lists. I think it was critically acclaimed before it even won all those Oscars, so they were just like, hey, they watched it. And it sounds like a scary movie title at first, so my mom didn't want to watch it, but my sister talked her into it. And so then she did watch it, and she was like, oh, without telling me anything about it, they said you would really like this. And so then I was like, what the fuck? It does sound like a scary movie. What
Did
the
your
hell could
mom
it be?
enjoy it?
Yeah, my mom really liked it. My whole family really liked it.
Interesting.
So I was surprised at what it was at the end.
It was super critically. It was the biggest thing ever in South Korea, and then
Yeah,
even
that's
in,
why I thought it was crazy. I hadn't heard of it before. Like, and we watched it like 2 days before the Oscars too. So like even at that point, I didn't know it was nominated or anything.
I'd seen one of his other movies and I didn't like it. So
Which one?
Which one?
Okja.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it also
on
a South
Netflix.
Korean movie?
Mm-mm.
Wait,
It's
is
a
it that
Netflix
weird
movie.
ass one? Where
Yeah, it's the one with
It
the
was
big.
animated, yeah.
Like,
Oh.
he also has another movie. Like he's done 2 English movies, I think, Okja and Snowpiercer, and that one has Chris Evans in it.
Does that one take place on a train?
It might. I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
but
it does. It does.
Okay, I saw like 30 minutes of it,
Yeah, what the
and
hell?
I absolutely
You
hated
guys have
it.
a podcast?
Get on my level.
Yeah. All right. I guess we can just drop into categories then. Score it. So we'll start with personal score. Since you guys are always talking about the audience score, we can guess the audience score today too. But we'll start with
Alright.
personal score. When I watched this, like finished watching it, and I didn't really know what to think of it, so I wrote this back then. I think it's improved a little bit since I've done more research on it and like I know more about like what actually happened. But I said 87.
I'm gonna give it a 91. That was pretty good.
Wow.
On the edge of
How
my
does
seat
that,
the
how
whole
does that relate to your other movies?
It's higher than all of them.
All of
No,
them?
it's the
Yeah, I
highest.
think I think this was probably the
Can
best
you rate
movie.
Kingsman as the
Kingsman.
highest one?
No, I think
last
this is better
time?
than Kingsman.
No, you like before this.
Yeah, I
Did
put
you
out like
think
an
it getting better?
85 or something.
The scale of
That's his
redistribution.
demo.
No, but I think Parasite's gonna be on top for a while. Like I don't see anything being. This was a really good movie.
You better
Yeah.
keep to that, girl.
Alright.
I will.
I will call you out.
91 I think is my limit as of now. So I thought it was a really good movie.
Until next week.
Till next week when we watch
Over, he's like
Avengers.
95.
Oh, fuck me.
Kellyanne.
Before you even said yours, I was thinking I'd rate it 87 because I thought it was really good, but it was like, I had to think about it,
It's a very complex movie.
which makes me like, I didn't leave it knowing that I loved it. I knew I liked
What'd
it.
you give Kingsman?
95,
94?
something like that.
Just wanted to know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
fuck
know.
off.
I think it's one of those movies where that you watch it and then you just sort of have to let it marinate in your brain while you like think about it. Because like at first I was like, well, I don't know if I liked it that much. But the more I thought about it and the more I sort of looked into it, I was like, man, this is some shit, you know? Like this is good
some
shit.
This is
It's
shit or
absolute
this
dog
is the
shit.
shit?
This is the shit. So like now after thinking about it, I've just started liking it more and more. I'd probably give it like a 93.
I
Wow.
was gonna say 92.
Oh,
Damn,
that's
I
a
like
lot.
this movie.
Damn,
I
Kellyanne.
also really liked it.
Will and
I
I
would-
think it's the highest I've rated a movie for sure.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think Kingsman was 90 or I think around 90, but I just liked how complex it was and how much you had to
Good
think
movie.
about it.
There was like very little plot holes. There was like maybe like 1 or 2. I think I said one when we watched the movie, but
We
It
can
was-
get to that.
yeah, we'll get to that. But I don't think it was very, very logical.
All right, we'll get
I just
to
wanna say
guessing. So we're guessing both the critic score on the audience score. So I didn't even like hold back with the critics. I just said 99, like 100, like I guess it went all the way, especially with all the Oscars it won. For audience, I went a little bit lower. I said 90 because I think it was definitely better for critics than for audience.
I think we looked it up before, so we
Wait,
saw
did you?
that critics. One of them was 99, so I'll guess critics was 99. But I think audience was 88.
I feel like the audience liked it. I was gonna say 100 for critics, low key, but
Yeah, dude, you know there's gonna be some.
There's
racist
one,
critics.
because
Yeah,
we
there's,
looked it up,
Some
right?
racist
We
guys.
said
There's too many Koreans in
we
this
said
movie.
the way the rating system works is like 99% of people like the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
so
not
so
that
I
you
guess
like
it is one. So
99%,
I guess I would
so
say I guess
it's like-
99 does make sense. But then for critics, for audience review, like everyone who's watched this movie, I feel like because a lot of
you
the
have
stuff.
racist people
yeah.
in the audience too, though. Like,
Yeah, there are more people.
Yeah, I'll say. What did you say?
I said 99 for critics, 90 for audience.
94. I think it was like 94 maybe for audience. I thought a lot of people like I found it hard to believe that people didn't like this movie that much, you know. So 94 and 99, I'd say.
I was gonna say I'd also say 99 for critics, but I feel like especially if people like rate the movie right after they watched it, like Brian was saying, I feel like more people would probably say they didn't like it. So
So you're on the 88 bandwagon with
I'm
me.
thinking lower, like 80,
Oh.
84.
God.
Oh.
Maybe.
You're
I-
lowballing me.
I'm going to say 98 for the audience rating.
Wow, it's
Throwing
fun
it
stuff.
out there, and then for the audience.
Wait, you just said audience?
No,
He
98
said
for the
critics, 98 for
yeah,
critics.
For the audience, I'll go with the 91.
Okay, so yeah, tomato meter was 99%,
That makes
as,
sense.
as expected.
yeah.
And I think Brian is the closest. The actual audience score is 92. So
Ooh.
that's the second week we've gotten the closest.
Yeah,
He knows
yeah.
the audience.
Man,
He's
people.
googling these things. He's playing it off.
Wait,
Yeah.
so that means Paddington
This is
2 has a
rigged.
100. So that means everyone who watched Paddington 2,
Every critic that
Every
bothered
critic that
to,
watched it.
they were
yeah.
like, I love this movie.
Yeah,
I
there
guess.
was not a single critic that did not enjoy Paddington.
Yeah.
Great movie, by the way. You should watch it.
Next
Are you being
week.
serious?
Yeah,
It's actually really
a very
good, yeah.
I,
like-
it's just a feel good movie. Like I
I watched
personally did not like it that much, but
It's a great movie.
it's a fine
It's a
movie, I
feel-good
guess.
movie.
There's nothing wrong with it. You can't be mad about it.
There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong
you
with
legit
it. It's
can't be
critically
mad at it.
acclaimed.
Look,
It's
so
fucking
like, why would you ever
Paddington.
rate it down? Yeah, they don't.
It's just,
do-
I thought it was boring, honestly. Like
Oh, dude, it was
nothing
so-
really
It
happens.
was funny. What are you
Yeah.
talking
it's funny, I guess, but oh, yeah.
It's a Parasite podcast, not
Alright.
not
Back to
Paddington.
Parasite.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago at the Oscars, it won 4, which is the most that any one single movie has won.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Shit.
Wow.
And so it won Oscar for Best Motion Picture, Best Achievement in Directing for Bong Joon-ho, Best Original Screenplay, and Best International Feature Film. So it was also the first international film that won Best Picture. So
I felt like that World War One movie won like more.
1970.
1970.
It was definitely
It won
up
so
there.
many.
I feel like it was like
It was
2 or 3.
nominated for
They
a
won
whole
3.
bunch.
Well, I mean, there was like the same pool that was nominated for a lot of
I
them.
know, but
Yeah.
there was like a streak of like 3 in a row that it won. Maybe that's
Really?
only 3 it
I
won.
just found it so surprising that that's the first movie that only won 4
Yeah, I
Oscars.
feel like
thought
there's
there would be
been-
a movie that would just completely blow the house down with, I don't know.
The Academy is fair.
Yeah.
Also won.
Oh yeah.
Also won. Oh yeah. Also won
yeah,
Golden
it's
Globe for
system.
Best Motion Picture Foreign Language.
Are all
So,
the award shows done? No.
I mean, for like this
For movies?
cycle, I mean Oscars every year. I think Emmys is in September, and I want to say Grammys was in January.
Yeah, the Grammys happened.
Yeah.
What are the Emmys for?
TV shows.
TV shows.
What about the Tonys?
Tonys.
Oh,
and
That's
those
what
are
plays,
for
right?
plays.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't,
wait.
I don't know when they are, but
No one does.
Who
You just
cares?
know someone has an EGOT. That's the only reason I know about
Who
Tony.
has an EGOT?
I-
Jackman
John
does.
Legend.
Hugh
Jackman?
Jackman does not have
Never
an
mind,
EGOT.
Jack-
John
Jackman.
Legend does.
John Legend
he
does.
actually?
John
Pretty
Legend
sure.
does.
I think
Fuck.
Whoopi Goldberg does.
Did what's his face
Popularity
get one?
contest?
Did Bradley
Whoopi
Cooper get one?
Goldberg.
Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg has one.
What the hell?
Those are the only famous people that you probably know. The other ones are really old. Andrew Lloyd Webber, you
Which one's that?
Phantom of the Opera.
Oh.
Makes sense.
Yeah, everyone else is pretty old. Mel Brooks, I guess, if you know. All right.
Mel Gibson.
Gibson has an
God,
EGOT.
No.
Dave Chappelle.
Playing Dave Chappelle.
playing.
Across 4 mediums.
All right, let's move on to favorite scenes and quotes. Just a disclaimer: I'm probably not going to put many clips in, just because they're all in Korean and we don't have the ability to have subtitles, so I would not know what's going on. But we'll start with this is kind of like a series of clips, but it was at the beginning of the movie. It's like the montage of Kevin like introducing like each of his family members into the park family. So I thought it was cool like watching each person get introduced like slowly. I think the Jessica introduction, which is his sister, this was like the slowest like one, and then like when his dad gets involved, then like it starts speeding up, and this all culminates into like the whole peach allergy thing with the housekeeper.
That was such a good scene.
Just that whole like progression of scenes was really
Like
cool
when
to
the
watch.
music is
Yeah.
playing.
Put,
Yeah.
put in the clip with the classical music, man. I always,
The music.
anytime a movie like
Go-
effectively
It's literally
uses,
just gonna be.
no, but anytime a movie
Classical
uses
music.
classical music effectively,
That
I
clip goes in here.
대박이긴 한데.
The dude, he like lifts up
Cute
the.
Girish whistling.
He like looks at the camera and he's like,
the fucking blood on
he
his
has the
face.
blood
like,
on the. What is this? That was a
Yeah,
good scene.
That was
I like
good. Next, I had the fast forward to when the old housekeeper comes back during the storm. I think this was like, I want to say not the climax of the movie, but like the turning points. Like this is when you're like, oh shit, something different is happening. Like it's not what.
Well, like
Yeah,
you
when
knew,
you see her
you knew,
husband down in the
That's-
basement,
that's,
and
like,
then
actual-
you make the connection and you're like, the 2 meals, that makes
dude.
sense.
We thought,
And then he's just like laying there all fucked up, like, yeah, that
dude,
was
I
iconic.
thought, we thought, I think like when they first showed him, we were like, yo, what if this is the real Pugs and the fake Pugs like the Parasite?
Yeah, we just came up with so many stupid theories, like right there in the moment.
So funny story, when we were watching this movie, so we have a Google Home, right? That's next to the TV, and I think something triggered it. But that exact scene, when she's running down the basement, and it's like super intense, hot shower started playing. And it was so weird, because it was like, this pop music like playing while she's
For
getting...
the shortest time, I thought it was
Yeah,
like,
I thought it was part of the
I thought it was
movie.
part of the movie.
I was
this is
like-
No,
the
'cause
most-
so many things were going on in that moment because like she's like going down the stairs. It's an intense scene. The music starts playing. Like there's like trap music playing in the background.
Yeah,
Brian's
hot showers.
dog was watching this movie with us. Kipper starts barking like crazy. Everything's going on. What is happening right now?
No, yeah, that was so funny though. We were like so confused. I was like, "What's going on?" Killian was like, "That's hot shower." I was like, "Oh."
We had to like pause the movie, like recalibrate, and then rewatch that
That was
scene.
so
I do wish though that if we watched it in the theaters, because I wanted to experience the whole moment
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
itself without all the craziness. And now I know that like what's gonna happen is not gonna be the
That's
same.
fair,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
We really did ruin that one moment with
I feel like it could have been, I don't know, really cool. But it still was.
still intense the
Still very
second
good.
one. Yeah.
But I just wonder what it would have been like if it wasn't the way it
Too.
was.
Alright, next I have them sneaking around the house after the family comes back. I think that was just really suspenseful, and it was kind of like you're on the edge of your seat, like waiting to see if they get caught or how they get out of the house. And then I have the family going back to their old house during the storm. That's just a really cool scene, just to see everything that's happening, and then the special effects with all of the rainwater and stuff like that. Just like shit coming out of the toilet, like
Yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes. That
Shit
was
coming out
when
of the
She
toilet.
sits down and
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
just
because
soaking
it's just
and,
like, what do you make of that? Like for
Yeah.
the longest time, I was like, what the hell am I supposed to take from this? And then she's just sitting there calmly, and they already live in a basement, and there are like 2 levels. It was just like strange. I was like, I know that I'm supposed to be taking something from this, but what is it? And so I liked it, and
yeah.
just like it filling with water was so
Metaphorical.
I feel like
something
it's
that I like from Kingsman too.
definitely an iconic
So
scene.
metaphorical.
Like when they go back 20 years from now and look at like most iconic scenes throughout history, that'll probably be one of them.
Okay, next I had
Bold claim.
bold.
Hey, come
Hot
back in
take.
20 years. Mark my words.
This
Write it
podcast,
down. Write it
episode
down.
400.
20-year reunion.
Timestamp.
Alright, next I said the final kill streak showdown from
Girl.
when the housekeeper's husband like basically like bashes in Kevin and then starts going around killing Jessica, and then Mr. Kim kills
Mr.
Mr.
Pug.
Park. So that whole sequence of scenes, that was probably like definitely the climax of the movie.
Yeah, and
That
the mom
one, yeah.
killed or Mrs. Kim killed the housekeeper's
Yeah,
husband too. Yeah.
Just like so many kills
There's a
right
lot of
there.
deaths, yeah.
Wait, did he die?
Quite
Like she
Yeah.
pushed him down the stairs. Is that what you're talking about?
I thought she
No,
stabbed him.
no,
with
no,
the-
she stabbed
the
him.
skewer, the
This-
kebab.
Oh, yeah,
Remember,
yeah,
because
yeah.
she was trying to kill her to avenge her.
Her daughter.
Right.
No,
Or the
Right.
daughter died. The
Jessica died.
Jessica
the
died.
housekeeper's husband was trying to kill Mrs. Kim because Mrs. Kim had killed his wife
Mhm.
Yes.
by kicking her down the stairs.
Oh, she was the one who got the
Yeah.
concussion. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more people who died now when I think about it. There's like at least
I mean,
4
the
or
only
5.
people who survived at the end of the movie were like,
The Richie Riches.
yeah.
Yo, how did
And,
that dude survive like
survived.
the
Kevin and his
yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
2
Yeah, but
blows
he-
to the head?
I mean, he
back
had
all
like
fucked up.
severe brain damage though.
Did you see
Symbolism.
all the
Mhm.
blood that was coming out? That is not realistic, man. There's no way.
Bro, it's an
Alright.
artistic choice.
Last one I had was the final scene of his father in the basement
This is an
and like
illusion.
signaling to his son.
Oh, that, yeah. That was cool, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was like the good like end of the movie.
I remember I got really motivated and went off after this movie and tried to learn Morse code.
Oh.
Did you actually do
I
that?
tried to. All I learned was SOS.
I know I saw
You got
this.
3 letters
It's a
in.
good one to know.
2 letters in, actually.
Fuck you.
Well, he probably just memorized like. Like
No,
I used
no.
to have.
There's a chart. I saw the tweet. Yeah, like the
chart,
tweet.
The chart has like all the letters, and then it has SOS at the end because like that's the
That's the
one
one
thing
thing
you're
you
supposed
need
to
to
know.
know.
But it's
Is
for
it-
everyone listening, it's ... dot dot dash 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 dot dot dot.
I know E is dot
Nice.
because it's the most common letter.
No, the thing I saw is like it's like a tree, and it was actually really like easy to read. So it's like if it's a dot or a dash, you go this side, and then each one like branches off. And if it's a dot. It was really
Well,
easy to
wait, if
read.
E is just a dash, how do you know it's SOS, not EOE?
You're supposed to just pause between letters. I think.
Dot,
dot,
You
dot,
pause between
dash,
letters,
dash,
and then how do you
dash,
pause
dot,
between
dot, dot.
words?
You don't.
You space.
So you just gotta know like where the.
I think you just write it down.
Alright.
It's like
Yeah.
not
You
good
kinda
for
gotta guess.
communication.
I mean, but like if you were given a string of letters, you could probably figure out where the spaces were.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
you have to
You have
write
to,
it
like-
down.
Oh yeah.
Unless
Okay.
it was in code.
A Morse code.
Can we just invent a language?
All right. Does anyone have any other favorite scenes or quotes you want to say?
I was just gonna say that flooding scene was the one that stuck out the most to me. That I remembered and wanted to talk about, but now I've
Yes.
talked about it. So
I don't think we can have any favorite quotes other than I like metaphorical, like that.
yeah,
We looked it up if that meant anything in
In Korean.
Korean, but
did it?
I don't think it did. Like people.
Okay, well then it was
people-
probably
I
him
th-
just like trying to draw
you know,
attention to something.
Yeah. Like people were saying, like that's like one of the things from the movie. Like everyone's like, oh, so metaphorical. So it's definitely like a meme that came from the movie.
Yeah,
But,
I
like-
was like at first I was like, is it like a?
I thought it was a bad
figure of
translation.
speech?
Yeah. But
it-
no, it's just him. Like that's just like his catchphrase. And then I like the.
It's the
I like-
director speaking directly to us.
I like
Bong
the
Joon-ho.
what's his name? Housekeeper's husband. I like how
What's his name? Oh, housekeeper's husband.
Yeah.
That was his official name.
Jian
The thing on the
said-
left is the
Yeah,
name
okay,
Girish.
my bad. But I liked how like his one every time he was like Mr. Park is like our god and he was like respect. That was good meme.
Oh, there's one that I forgot to mention. When he's, I think they're in like the gym or whatever after it's flooding and like they have all of the people together.
Yeah.
Kevin is like, so what's your plan? And his
Yeah.
father says there is no plan. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, how are we gonna get revenge or like how are we gonna get back there and whatever? And he's like, sometimes the best plan is no plan. And I just thought it was.
He
a
was.
good
I
quote.
think no. He said the best plan is no plan because you can't fail
Yeah.
if you have no plan. And I think that was like the meme.
I like right before, like at the party, right before everyone dies, when Kevin's dad, I forget, Mr.
Kim. He
like is sitting. I don't remember if he's talking. And he's talking to the mom, right? And the mom's like, "Oh, the rain was like so awesome.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah,
helped us out so
yeah,
much."
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that later, but that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I can wait then. But that was my favorite.
That was good.
He was a great actor in terms
Yeah.
of
I thought all
how
of
much
them
he
were
was-
really good. Yeah.
how much he was able to convey with just his facial expressions. Like you could tell the moment where
Yeah.
he's like slowly getting more and more pissed,
Well, yeah,
but he
like,
has to contain
That's my
himself.
favorite part because like that's when you realize kind of what the whole movie. At least like that's when I realized like,
Yeah.
what the whole movie was about. Like,
And then
It's
even that
about the-
moment where, what is it, Mr. Park was reaching to grab the keys, and then he has to hold the nose because that's like smelling bad or poor people smelling bad was a sort of a theme or a common reoccurrence. And then it pans to Mr. Park or
Mr.
Mr. Kim, and then you suddenly like see his face, and suddenly like you see that he snaps, like he goes from one side to the other, and then
and then he kills me.
yeah.
All right. We're gonna move on then to our Zuko Award. I think before we do like any like reasoning or anything, I think we should just go around and say who you think the favorite character is because there's few for this one.
Favorite
Favorite, you mean
I mean
best-
favorite
best-
character, best character development.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
So I'll go last this time. So
I go.
Yeah.
I'll say Mr. Kim.
mm-hmm.
Do you
Well,
want-
no reasoning, just
Just for now.
just who's
I'd also say Mr. Kim.
Pass.
What?
I'll come back.
I have to, because I don't know if I think it's Mr. Kim or if I think it's his.
Kevin.
Like, I don't know if it's Mr. Kim or if it's the old housekeeper.
Ooh. Hot
Interesting.
takes.
So I guess
Hot
I'm
takes.
torn between those two.
all right.
Actually, no. Old housekeeper.
Oh.
Ooh, hot take.
I want to hear your reasoning, but I said Mr. Kim as well. Brian.
I'm gonna go with Jessica.
Okay.
T.
Bold. All right. Since you guys are in the minority, you want to go first?
Thank you.
Minorities, huh?
Yeah, this is affirmative action, I guess.
All right, Kellyanne can start.
I think that she was most developed because she started out like almost seemed like a bitch. She was taking care of the house, and it was like, oh, she came from the old house, so then like the Kims saw her as a threat, kind of like as an insider. And then as the movie went on, you know, she was out of their lives, and then she came back, and then you realize this whole depth. She's just as desperate as they are, and she's in the house caring for her husband, and then they fuck up, and then she realizes that they're weak, and then she's like back on top. So it's like she goes from like feeling like head bitch in charge to begging them, and you realize she's got a family too, and then to like wanting to fuck them up, and then to eventually just like her being, I don't know,
Dead.
yeah, dead.
It was funny.
I
No,
did-
There was a scene where she was like, when they discover her in the basement, and she's talking to Mrs. Kim
Mrs.
or Park. She was like,
no,
she
Miss
was-
Kim, Miss Kim.
She calls her like, oh sis,
Sister,
you know how
yeah,
it is. And
yeah.
she's like,
Yeah.
don't call me sis, bitch. And then when it's like
It's like
reversed,
a minute later.
and then she comes back, it's like, oh sis, and then she's like,
Fuck
fuck
off.
you. Yeah, exactly. So you can see how quickly.
That was so
She did
funny.
have a lot of like range, I guess.
I
It's
thought
like
it was.
character with
I
more
thought it was
range.
really. I can see because like when you first introduced her and then they get rid of her, and you're like, damn, looks like she was just like a minor character, and then like she comes back and you're like, shit, she's like one of the main ones, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I do think she has the worst death out of everyone because like she got the peach allergy first, like, and then she
Oh,
gets pushed
yeah.
down the stairs. She has a concussion, and then for like a day
Dies.
she's just downstairs like bleeding out, and her husband's like watching her die.
Internally
Yeah.
hemorrhaging.
I think it was a big. I think having her as a character was a statement because it's about the rich versus the poor, right? With you have the Parks and the Kims, but then you see also their interaction because the housekeeper and then I keep on forgetting. Is it the Park Kims, right?
the Kims
Kims
are
are
the
the
Kims are the
poor
poor
ones.
ones, yeah. So the Kims and her, they're on the same level, but you see that even the poor are fighting each other to sort of drag each other on
Yeah.
top, which is bringing each other also down and separating the gap even more.
Yeah.
Good point.
Another commentary.
I also have a question about the character names. I kind of just noticed. So I don't know. We don't have any. If we have any Korean viewers out there, so like their names are like Ki Woo and then Ki Jung and then Ki Tae, except for the mom.
I think it's Key Tech.
Ki. So we
Wow.
worked last summer. No, so in Korean culture, is that like the last name, the family name? Because like other than Chung Suk, the mom, like they all have that, and then even for the Parks, like their children are Da Song and Da Hai. So is that the family name?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think so.
Seems like it.
Oh, just realized that.
Audience
Sorry, I
members, let us know.
Any
Send
all
us
of
your
our
mail.
all of our
Comment below.
Korean,
Yeah.
comment below.
Comment on.
All right.
Okay, so
Brian, you want to give your justification for Jessica?
I don't know. Like, she might not be.
it's
maybe-
my sister's name, so.
Yeah, Brand's sister.
My sister's name is Jessica for all those that don't know. But
Brand's name is not Kevin.
I think my parents almost named me Kevin. That would have been weird. But she might not be the most developed, but I like the way that how her character development was a little more subtle and you had to read into it. Well, like first of all, I don't know about you guys, but in my opinion, I thought she was really pretty and it seemed like
Oh,
for
yeah,
like
she
the
was hot.
rich people, like they were all like just, you know, super attractive and that sort of thing, and then the poor family there was meant to be like not as attractive, but then there she was sort of like sticking out, and there was a whole thing throughout the movie where
She looked like she belonged.
they kept on, and they mentioned it in many comments passing by. It was like you fit in the
When they were
best.
drinking.
Yeah, like you fit in with the best with the rich family, and she also seemed like the smartest and most cunning. And out of the four, even though the whole family is very smart, I feel like she had the best chance to actually, you know, move up the ladder. And
That's the whole.
ironically, she's
Yeah.
the only one that dies.
The
out of
whole point
family.
is it is impossible to move up the
So-
socioeconomic ladder.
I don't know. I just thought it was like another interesting sort of. It definitely had to be intentional. Like all these small details,
Yeah.
they don't go unnoticed.
But yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
She
like
was
kind.
pretty, so she was the biggest threat, so they killed her.
She kind of like grew throughout the movie because like they were like, oh, she maybe does belong here, and then she doesn't.
All right. I guess we
Mr.
can give
Kim's.
ours now for Mr. Kim. You guys can go first, I guess, and then I'll fill in anything that I had.
You were me.
The reason, I don't know. Well, so like in the beginning of the movie, I remember this line where Kevin, I don't remember who he's talking to, maybe his friend, but he was like, said something along the lines of like his dad is just like lazy and that's why he doesn't have a job or something. Like he could
Yeah.
work, but he's just lazy and that's why they like are so poor. And then like that's all we're led to believe about him, and because that's the beginning of the movie, so we're like, oh, so they just have lazy parents and that's why they are so poor. And then as the movie progresses, like obviously he gets a job as a driver, but then like towards the end of the movie, you see how hurt he gets when like the Parks are talking about how nice everything is and like their house was flooded, and like he gets so upset because it like this has just been his life, and like you finally sort of understand. Like it takes a long time for me, but like you understand all of a sudden like it's not his fault, like it's not any of their
Yeah.
fault. They're just stuck there and like.
I think the point of the movie was to say that the Parks aren't, or the Kims aren't like lazy.
Yeah.
They're hardworking, if anything, and they're not stupid either. It's just that there's like the way the society is. It's hard for them to move up.
But I just found it interesting that like even their kids in the beginning of the movie, like didn't realize why they were so like why it was them that was poor, but it's just like that's how it is, and it's unfortunate. But yeah,
You
I would
seem
say
the most
for-
passionate about the
Yeah,
whole
I would
entire
say for
thing.
Mr. Kim, I think that's why I thought he had the best development, because at least for me, I didn't like for me, like I didn't really realize how much he was like going over the edge until like after the flooding happened. I think that's when like the main switches started turning, but like that's when that's for me, that's when I was like, okay, like he goes from at the beginning, like, cause like out of the whole family, he seemed like the most chill guy, you know, like he was like very comedic, like even when they're practicing like how they're gonna infiltrate the family, they're like doing the whole scene where he has like his dialogues and stuff, and he's like super comedic, and he just seems like so chill, like he seems like the most calm out of the whole family, because he's like, this is my life, and he's like okay with it, and then by the end of the movie he's like full on like not containing it, so I thought that was how he changed in terms of his personality too.
Yeah, you guys pretty much covered most of everything I was gonna say. He's worked hard his whole life, but because of a rig system, he can't really move any higher. He like starts working with the parks, and like, I feel like he's just trying to get by, but he also feels entitled to it, like the prosperity, because like, he's worked hard. Like, why should the parks have this stuff and he doesn't? I actually had the quote here from when they escape the house, and he's like, if you make a plan, life never works out that way. Like I said, this is the moment that he kind of just like loses all hope, and he's like, fuck it, like nothing matters anymore. And then finally at the party, when like the madman like comes out of the basement and like stabs his daughter, he loses it because Mr. Park's just like trying to get him to drive their family away to safety, and he doesn't care about like his servants or anything like that. So I think that's when he like finally loses it. And we talked about the whole like theme of like smell of poor people and stuff like that. So I think like seeing him like, because like early in the movie he talks about like the fact that he smells, and like that's I thought it was funny at the time, but like it's a serious concern, I guess, for and
Because it's a problem.
yeah,
too,
Mr. Kim
'cause,
feels
yeah.
self-conscious about it too, because he like smells himself and he's like, do I really?
It like they say it a lot too in the movie.
Yeah.
They're like, I like our driver, but you know, like when they think they're alone,
Yeah.
they're like, but you kind of smell like, cause they're hiding. But he's like, you kind of smell like him. He's like, I just hate that smell. You know. He's like, I say he doesn't cross the line, but he crosses the line with that smell. It's like, aha, this guy smells. But then you're like, oh, I feel kind of bad for him.
And then like seeing him reach below like the dead body and like just like for the smell, and he's like, wow, this guy's an asshole. But yeah.
Yeah, I think smell, they use that as a sensory like association with the poor, because it's not common, but it was interesting because it came up, you know, even at first
Yeah.
when the little kid was like,
they
all
smell the
the
same,
same,
yeah.
and then they're like,
Yeah,
what's wrong with us? Like they can't smell themselves because you're just so used to it, but maybe that's a message that been poor their whole entire lives, that sometimes they don't even realize how bad their conditions are, or how bad their conditions appear to the richer upper class. So I thought that was interesting.
I honestly think you could make a case for anyone having a good character.
I'll say the person who I think like is the least deserving for a good character arc. I guess this is kind of overrated now, but I
Wait.
did not like Kevin.
Fuck you! I was gonna say the second most person I was gonna say was Kevin.
I did not like Kevin.
Why?
I thought he was overrated.
Why?
Because like
I was
He
gonna
just
say
seems
Kevin
like,
as
yes.
the second best character, because I was gonna say like he starts off as like this meek little kid, and in the end he's the one who goes down to fucking kill them. He dies, but he's the one who takes the
he
action.
doesn't die.
Before we go on with this, how old do you think the actor for Kevin is?
Oh,
Because I actually looked it up because I was very curious because I couldn't tell. Because he's like,
he looks.
A
He has
very
he has a baby face. Yeah.
I'll say 22.
what do you think?
Like 24.
23.
25.
I assume he's like really old.
He's 29.
Oh,
And
shit.
He looks like he could be. In
He
high
looks like
school
he's
or
like
something.
yeah,
so
60.
young.
Asian don't raise him.
Yeah, but also,
I've never heard that before.
Because black don't cry.
Black
Asian
don't crack,
don't
Asian don't raisin.
Dahai looked like a 3-year-old, like in the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he looked
she-
really young.
No,
No,
and
the
also like
kid, the boy,
the
girl,
boy,
or
the girl.
No, the
Dahai,
girl
oh,
looked
yeah.
like
Oh,
like
she was supposed to be in high school. or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, she looked like she was like
she was
12.
like yeah, like
Yeah.
She's actually 30.
Asian don't raisin, man. I've literally never heard anyone say.
It's 'cause you're
No, but
Asian.
I was gonna say I thought Kevin had a good character.
Yeah, technically.
Alright.
Yeah.
Anyone have any other Zuko Award stuff?
I thought Mr. Park's development was interesting, but like in the negative way.
yeah, I guess.
Because he started out seeming like a nice guy and like cool.
But,
Because
like,
he's
the
rich
thing-
and like he just had that demeanor about him.
The
But
thing with him though is like I don't feel like
I feel like his character development for you thinking he's negative is that like he's the same throughout the movie, but you just see that like indirectly how like the rich are like kind of fucking the poor, you know?
Controversial statement, but like,
Ooh, hot
do you
take.
think Mr. Park did anything wrong? Really, like, if you put yourself in,
I have a fan theory that I was gonna talk about later.
Do it now.
Yeah.
Do you now?
What was it? Wait, what
Alright.
category was it under?
It was under underrated because it's something I didn't notice, and I can't take credit for it because I read online. But it's
Yeah,
a
just say
very
no,
interesting theory.
Go for it.
Bong Joon-ho hasn't confirmed this, so it might not be. It might just be people seeing it. But there's the possibility that Mr. Park and Jessica had an affair. All right, I'll
Who's
tell you.
Jessica? Oh,
Jessica's the daughter. I'll tell you the evidence for it, and then you can say what you think.
Ooh,
Alright, so-
tea.
I never saw that came out of left field.
Yeah, that's it changes a lot of motives of Mr. Kim's. That's why I was gonna bring up later, but
You mean Mr. Park or Mr.
both
Kim?
because this
Mr.
could
Kim
explain
finds
why
out.
he kills him.
Oh,
does
I
he
see.
know?
Yeah. Okay. So this is the evidence for it. When Mrs. Park is talking to Mr. Kim about her housekeeper, she holds his hand and stuff, and that leads him to believe that she's a good person. So Mr. Kim comes home and he has this idea that the mom is a good person, and his daughter is like, no, she's a stupid bitch, which is her actual words. He argues that her daughter he thinks she's a generous person, and that's why in the car conversation, Mr. Park asks Mr. Kim, he's like. Mr. Kim asked Mr. Park, he doubts, that his, why would this dude cheat on his wife? So he says, do you really love her? Because he thinks she's a really good woman, so, why would you cheat on her? And, and he's just talking a bunch of shit about his wife, basically. So, that's the first instinct that he realizes that, him and his wife aren't really close. During the scene when Mr. Kim's daughter, Jessica, is, enjoying herself in the bathtub, her brother asks, why are you so comfortable here? And that's because she's been there before.
Oh, you're saying they had an affair before they met the family?
No, while she was
Yeah.
working
Oh,
for the
okay.
family.
Okay.
Again, in the poor family's dinner scene, the daughter keeps bringing up that the rich housewife is a stupid bitch. Of all the 4 members of the rich family, she keeps singling out Mrs. Park. That's because she's having an affair with Mr. Park, and his wife can't even figure that out. During the sex scene with Mr. Park and his wife, he jokes it would turn him on even more if his wife was wearing that cheap panties he found in the car. Those are Jessica's.
Oh, tea.
Finally, in the last scene, when the 2 men are secretly discussing the plan of surprising his son with the Native American stuff, Mr. Park tells Mr. Kim that they can be the villains together, while Jessica, who he doesn't know is Mr. Kim's daughter, says she's gonna play the victim and the son can be the hero. It wasn't his wife's plan; it was his plan, and it was his plan so that he could sexually touch her without any doubt. When Mr. Kim asks if his wife came up with the idea and if he truly loves his wife again, Mr. Park can't hold it anymore, and he accidentally says, "I will raise your salary if you keep this work a secret." If you notice Mr. Kim's facial expression, this is the moment that he finds out that this dude is having sex with his daughter, and that this could explain everything about why he kills Mr. Park. It's not a commentary on rich and poor as much as it is revenge. How do you feel?
I don't like that one as much.
It seems a little far-fetched. I don't remember the part where he says, "I'll raise your salary," though.
He does say that though.
Weird.
I thought that was more of just
I thought that was we'll raise your salary. I thought it was because it's humiliating to
do
do
your
yourself.
job,
Yeah.
That's what
and
I
I'll
would've
just live
thought.
my life. Stop.
Yeah.
Because he's asking pretty personal questions. If I had a servant and he's like, "Yo, how do you like your wife?" and I'm like, "It's none of your business."
Fuck off,
Yeah.
man.
But then it makes sense that he would get offended too if he said just shut up and I'll give you a little more money.
Yeah, that's
that would
why
be
I
offensive.
didn't notice it throughout this. But then when I read this, I was like, wow,
It
that's
seems a little far-fetched.
But going
far-fetched,
back
but
to
it's
Brand's
interesting.
point, disregarding this theory, I actually
Wow.
You gave us 5 seconds to talk about it, and now you're so shut up about
No,
this.
not that. Even okay. If the theory isn't true, I don't think I don't think Mr. Park did anything wrong.
That's what I'm kind of. Well, I don't want to go.
But
off
if
of
this
it.
theory is true, obviously,
Yeah.
this is
The whole point I brought it up was because if you think about it,
indirectly,
The
he
Parks
didn't know
really
he was
do
doing
anything
anything.
wrong. Yes, they were rich, but is being rich a crime? No, and it's not like
Twitter would have you think
I
that
mean-
it is.
okay, but
I'm not
like
saying-
we
I
we
mean,
can talk about the socioeconomic problems with being rich, but
no, but just being rich.
I think
on its own is
indirectly
not-
he was
It's
doing a lot
just
of
being
stuff.
insensitive.
It's not
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
insensitive. It's unaware,
It's insensitive. Yeah, that's.
ignorant. But it's not insensitive.
No,
they
that's
weren't
it.
being rude. They just didn't
But was
know.
it? Yeah, was
Well,
this
yeah, that's insensitive.
intentional or malicious? No,
think
they were just
insensitive's
doing what they
different
were
from
doing, and it's I don't know.
If
It's
you're-
hard to find a true you want to peg them as the villains, but at the same time, I think it's a little too
'Cause they were
rash
being
just to
taken
be like,
advantage
oh,
of,
rich
too,
is
so.
bad, you know, like blah blah blah. That's communism.
I mean, even if you're being unintentionally like ignorant, it's still being insensitive to someone. Like,
I don't know. Like for me, when I think of insensitive, I feel it as like some intention behind it, and I don't think they were intentional. Like saying, "Oh, the rain was good for us." Like it was good for them,
yeah, but
and that's not insensitive.
it's
ignorant.
definitely ignorant.
Yeah.
But
So do
there's
you
like,
think that was bad on their part? Like,
I don't think it's bad that they said it because they didn't know any better. But like
that's their-
ignorance is bad
like-
too. Yeah.
they should know better. Yeah, like
On the one hand, though, how could they?
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
that's
Like,
everyone's
I mean, yeah,
responsibility.
I mean, but it's
When
a
you're
little
that rich,
unfair.
you
Yeah,
don't
like
need to.
I doubt they've ever been to the area that the Kims were living
It's
at.
like
they
blaming-
would have no idea, you know.
I'm trying to think of.
There's that philosopher, I forgot, I think it's John Locke, but he's like, the rich have a social responsibility to take care of the
I
society.
mean, I'm not
Oh,
saying they
that's
have
the-
to like
that's
start
the-
donating to charity, but like,
Oh, I feel like they should though.
well, yeah, they should. But I'm like,
That's the thing.
it's like
But, like,
I'm
you know,
trying to think of
people
a good
were-
metaphor. Like if a child shot someone because they didn't know how a gun worked. Like I don't know. It's like that's not a good metaphor. it's like they should have, you know, like, oh, poor them, or not poor them. Like we can't blame them for being so
Rich,
ignorant.
though.
Like yeah, you can.
That's
Well-
like not well, but okay. So like when people were trying to say that like colorblind race or like not colorblind, like we should be colorblind, you know, like back when we were kids is how we were taught to deal with race. It wasn't like how could we have known any better that that wasn't a good thing? But now it's like you respect other people's race and you have to acknowledge it. And like back in the day, no one knew any better. Not to say it was good, but how could you know any better until like sociologists come out and say like, well, you can't just ignore people. Like we didn't know, you know.
I feel like we know that you can't
I bet-
ignore.
When you first start out in the world, you're so pure.
But I mean, that's just how like the early 2000s were, anyways. Though with race, like everyone was like, just don't acknowledge color because it doesn't matter. And then it was like, oh, it does matter. So it wasn't our fault that we didn't know, but I guess it was our social responsibility to come to that realization.
It's hella deep.
It was like the point of this movie is like to make it so that people
They're
aren't
not
ignorant
ignorant,
anymore,
yeah.
which is like, so like in like today, if that happened, I'd be pissed because like you should know, like this is a thing that is being discussed now, like you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But I mean,
I think the equivalent is like saying like if rich people were like, thank God global warming is happening, it's a little bit warmer now, and like it affects everyone, but they're just not
Yeah.
aware that it'll affect people more.
Yeah. It's closed-minded.
It's a deep ass
Like,
discussion.
am I like? It's just like it makes me mad if people are ignorant like that. Like I'm not gonna like kill them or anything. Or
No,
you know, I don't
it's a
think they should
revolution.
be. I don't think they should be punished necessarily. It's just like that's like I don't like you anymore. Like
No,
if
that's
you're
the
gonna be
thing, like,
ignorant.
yeah, there's a problem, which is why the whole movie exists to
Yeah,
show that.
exactly.
But as the characters themselves,
Yeah,
do you
it
think
depends on the time they're in. I guess.
No, but like do you think the Parks actually are like just bad people? You know, like it's hard to blame somebody for
it's not
Who's
like they're
telling them they're
awful
wrong?
people.
I don't think they're like alright, this is another point I have later, but I don't think they're the villains. I don't think this movie really has a villain.
Yeah, that's I guess the point
Yeah.
I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Like,
The
maybe
villain
it's not
is the society itself.
Because it's really
man versus man versus
This is man versus society.
man versus self, man. There's all those
Man versus
conflicts.
dog.
Yeah.
What was that from?
I can't-
English.
No,
No,
it was
it's
from
from
a
a show or
show. Yeah,
something.
I think it was New Girl.
No.
I think it
Yeah,
was.
no, I
Nick,
think
no,
it
Nick.
is.
Nick
Nick
is like
says that.
Nick's
Nick
like
says
you know the
that.
comic
There's
man
like
versus
there's
man.
like
Man
six
versus
types.
dog.
Yeah. There's 6 types of novels.
Man versus dog.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna keep moving because I'm sure we'll hit these points later on too. Sequel or prequel? This is pretty hard for me. For this movie, I want this to be a standalone movie, but it could have either. Honestly, for me, I said the sequel was. I'm gonna go back on this later, but it was Kevin trying to make money and Kim surviving in the basement, but. I realize now it's not great because the point was that Kevin will never make enough money.
The point was that's a doing. So.
But Mr. Kim surviving in the basement would be a funny movie. Like just him coming out occasionally.
I don't know.
I don't think this is the few times I think this is the first time on this podcast I said there should not be a
Yeah.
prequel or sequel.
Yeah, that's what I
Nor
said.
can I think of
You
any.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could say a prequel would be if the Kim family like did previous scams and then they talked about those. That'd be entertaining.
I feel like it lessens the fact of the original one if you have like
Yeah,
just
like,
a
that'd be
little
a
like
story, not a
secondary prequel or sequel. Like,
mean, yeah,
I
like-
like the fact that it's biased because like if you're just showing scans, it feels more like a TV show or like some kind of like.
You're diluting the
yeah.
message of the original.
I mean,
Like,
yeah,
oh, it's
obviously.
just these guys doing Ocean's 11 with rich people or something like that, and not an actual commentary of what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah. Pretty anti-sequel prequel on this one, personally.
Not much to say.
I'll keep going. Alternate universe. If this movie was remade, or if I'm sorry, I already changed this thing. Alternate universe. Different things about this movie. I couldn't find a lot because when I was researching the movie, there's not a lot that exists like for production wise, like how it was made. But here are some facts that I found about some things that could have changed. So Bong Joon-ho, he first chose Kang Ho-Song and Woo-Shik Choi to play Mr. Kim and Kevin, and since they were both in his previous movie Okja, and he chose these two before any of the other actors. Bong Joon-ho said that if Song had declined his part to play Mr. Kim, he would not have made this movie because he
What
couldn't think
the-
of any other actors to play this part.
That's insane.
So that's pretty cool.
Korean actors.
Yeah, I
or
was gonna
like
say.
to, like,
I
go
was
see
gonna
that
say if we're
shit.
doing alternate universe, do you think they could make this as a Hollywood movie?
Yeah, that's something. It's like maybe
And-
not in
and
South
slash who would you
Korea,
cast?
Maybe what if it's in another country?
Slash would the themes carry
It
over?
could be in America.
Yeah.
It could be in India. I don't know. Like, what do you think?
There are no rich people in India.
No, this is actually
Whoa.
similar to India because I feel like the wealth gap is a lot bigger in India
It's
than
big
it is.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Here.
no. So like, do you?
But, like, there's,
how
like-
do you think it'll be?
No, the wealth gap is way bigger
Yeah, it's
in
pretty
India.
bad.
Because I was, talking about this movie with one of my friends. His name is Justin Park, and he's Korean. And he said when he watched this, he said the movie really moved him. One of the reasons was because it depicted Korean life so well, and like obviously I couldn't comment on it. I was like, oh, I guess if you say so, then yeah. But like he was like he did such a good job on like just capturing the essence of what it's like to live in Korea, whether you're poor or rich.
Yeah.
Because so maybe like those small details would be different if it was in America or something.
I think I did read on Twitter somewhere that it's like pretty common for people to live in those like half basements.
Mhm.
In
Yeah,
Korea,
yeah,
that's
and
a-
so like that couldn't have been the same in like an American film, and that was definitely like integral to the point. Like once you realize,
The basement was very metaphorical as well. throughout the
like
movie.
once there's the flip, and then you realize it's about like rich versus poor, and then they come back to the house, you're like, oh, like it's so clear now that they live underground, and the
They're
other guys
literally a level
live on
below.
top of a hill. You know,
Yeah.
They had
like
to keep on going down.
No,
through
I think that
the-
was the thing. Like throughout the movie, like
Yeah.
it was where you were, because the housekeeper's family lived in the basement because they were the lowest of the low, and then the Parks when they came, they would like the Parks rooms and stuff were all on the top floor. Like that's usually where they were, and then the servant like the Kims whenever they were there, they would always be in like the family room living room area because that was the actual level of hierarchy as well.
Yeah. So there's the theme
The
of,
basement was
like,
very metaphorical.
Basements.
levels, and then also levels in society, like where you're on the phone pole. It matched up really well. I remember like reading some comment by the director. He was saying like the reason that they're in a half basement, not only because it's common in South Korea, but it shows that they had like maybe the like they're half down and half underground and half above ground, so it
Oh.
shows the possibility of them moving up. But in the end, you see that they'd never make it. And in fact, the father who starts out in a half basement ends up living the rest of life in a full basement, never to see the light. Yeah, so
Nice. All right, back to alternate universe. Other things that I found out online. Bong Joon-ho originally thought that Parasite could be a play, but after writing his first scene, he started thinking about all the camera angles that he could put, and he realized it had to be a film. So this could possibly have been a play.
I never would have seen it.
Yeah,
none of us would have.
None of us would
not
have.
a big play.
Would not have won an Oscar. Maybe won a Tony. Bong Joon-ho could have had an EGOT.
Bong Joon-ho re-released this film in black and white after the original release date, partly for his love of black and white cinematography, but also because he thought it would better show the contrast between the rich and poor living. I don't understand that as much, but
I could see how it would be a very artistic choice.
Probably be a lot of light in the like.
Yeah, they
in
had
the
so many
Park
windows.
house versus a lot of dark in the Kim
Yeah.
house and like
Yeah.
that side of town.
I haven't seen a lot of black and white film, but I guess that would
I mean, like, cause that
I'm
shows up
trying
on
to
grayscale a lot more, like
Yeah.
just how bright the
lighting.
white is versus the more of the like black. It's just easier to see.
I think I've seen like one black and white movie ever, but like black and white because it was old black and white.
Yeah.
All
It's a
sped up.
Wonderful Life. Still.
Yeah. Some railroad or something weird movie.
I've seen a couple.
I think they re-released Logan in a black and white cut. I don't think I watched
Really?
it.
Logan.
The Wolverine movie.
Why?
That's what I thought. Yeah, no, I saw it. I was just making sure, and I did not like it.
What?
But everyone really liked
I
that
like
movie.
that.
In black and white, you watched it?
No.
No.
watched
I was
it in
saying,
color.
yeah, I was saying, but I know, I'm pretty sure they did do a re-release in black and white. Like, it's a common thing to do.
Did not know that. Girish
Alright.
is laying some film knowledge on us.
Wait, let me make sure that was right, actually. I'm pretty
Does not
sure.
I'm
exist.
pretty
sure.
right now we're like,
Fact
fuck
checking.
you, Girish, 1 star.
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm good.
Was it a whole movie or was it just a...
No, they made a whole black and white version.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
It can't
you
be
just,
that hard.
you just click black
Yeah.
and white.
No,
Black and white.
I'm pretty sure they do have to do like a lot of color adjusting to like, cause like the point of doing a black and white is to. I think the whole point of doing a black and white cut for any movie is to like, for symbolism. So like you want to really highlight the brighter moments, and like I think you do have to do a little more than just a black and white cut too.
I don't know about that.
I don't know enough about black and white to comment, but all right, we'll move on to our next category then, personal impact. We talked a lot about different things, so I assume we'll have different points for this. We can start with the rich and poor point. I liked how they showed that the Park and Kim family are basically like mirror images of each other, like dad, mom, boy, girl, and how they're like both differently raised, and like the resentment that like festers because of this. We talked about how the rich don't know exactly how bad they're being to the poor, with their comments about like their smell and the rain. I think Will said this earlier, but when she said it was like it's raining, it was good for us, but it obviously destroyed the Kim's like home and stuff like that. You guys want to add stuff
Personal impact.
for rich and poor?
I mean, I feel like we already covered it and stuff we said.
Well,
I want to say something about like what I was saying earlier and like the rain thing, because she says like the rain was so good, you know, not like the rain was so good for us. She just says like the rain was so good, and it's like just saying
Cleansing.
things like that is how, like if you said the rain was so good for us, because you don't know how the rain, like, you never know. So like, and like that's just like that's a small example of how like even though you don't know. Like, you don't have to be thinking about how stuff affects everyone. You could just, like, not say blanket statements like that, and then it won't hurt people as much.
I feel like, I mean, the mom was supposed to be portrayed as a pretty simple woman.
Yeah.
she was.
So, like,
A
it
stupid
makes,
bitch, if you will.
I mean, that's going too far, but
Those
But
are
I mean,
Jessica's actual words.
that's
You
why,
might say.
like,
Yeah, no, it
they
makes
had
sense.
her character say
Yeah.
stuff
But
like
that's,
that
like,
because she's
the-
unaware.
But
Yeah,
that's a archetype of someone in, like, the, she's there
Someone
for a
in
reason.
the stupid bitch role.
Yeah, like, those people exist, believe it or not.
Did you see? No.
What do you think is a good
She said
comparison of
her-
the Park family to real family?
the Kardashians?
Kardashians,
Yeah.
I feel like they're doing service now and stuff. Like some of them are unaware, but I think Kim seems like she's
Kim is like the only one who's.
she's getting her law degree and she's like they donate and stuff and she's vegan. Like she just like is making herself aware and she's gotten all those people pardoned for life
yeah.
sentences.
It's hard to know because like, we don't see.
Does anyone here
rich
actually follow the
families.
Kardashians a lot?
No.
Yeah.
When
We
they make
don't-
the news.
We don't get like an eye into how rich families act in their personal
Yeah.
lives like we did
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the movie.
and it's like they're not like celebrities; they're just rich.
Yeah.
I think that's a little different from the
Yeah.
Kardashians.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
I assume Bezos.
I was gonna say
Bezos,
like
yeah.
maybe
Is like that.
Elon, like just. Like
I
not
know
thinking
Bill
about the
Gates is
poor.
like hella humble. Like I know he I know he dresses in like the same shit every day. Like he would like
That's because he's lazy.
But yeah, they've all
Yeah.
got their like little shtick, you know. Who
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
what
yeah.
what's his face with the turtleneck? It's like you're not.
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, you're not. You're not
Mark
He didn't wear
Zuckerberg
that
being a
every
fucking
day.
robot.
endearing
Yeah.
yourself to me by doing that.
Trying to think
I
of,
feel like
like,
Bill Gates is a bad
You know,
example
like
of
the
those.
Koch
those
brothers.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
Oh
probably how
yeah,
they
those
are.
For
like,
sure.
those are full ass.
Just like not
Absolutely.
famous, but like rich as hell.
You know,
like top 10 in
Bloomberg.
the world, rich people. They're
Bloomberg
probably
could
just
be like
assholes.
Or Trump. Trump for sure.
Yeah,
Speaking of which, leads me to one of my next points. Did you guys see Trump's
Yeah.
tweet?
Yeah.
Now the tweet
No.
is him like talking.
His response.
Is that a
Has,
rally?
who hasn't?
Yeah.
Who hasn't seen
Someone
it?
asked him about it.
I
yeah.
did not see it.
Okay, Kellyanne. So
Wow.
Hey, put in the clip.
I
It's not
will.
that
No,
exciting.
it's not. It's not. Okay.
It's exactly what you think you would say.
I'm so
Paraphrased.
fucking excited.
Basically, he heard about the Oscars and he was like, Parasite won.
He heard about him.
He heard
like,
about it.
literally a week later.
Yeah,
like,
like this tweet was like a
Someone
couple days
asked him,
ago.
Like it was like a.
it was an interview.
It was
yeah.
a press
Oh,
conference.
Yeah, like a press thing.
Some
Yeah,
shit.
and so he was like, "Oh, Parasite won," and basically he was like, "Why couldn't it have been like an American movie?" He's like, "We already have tensions with South Korea, you know? Why did the South Korean movie have to win?" And it was just
He
pretty.
said something like he said it something and then he came back to it and that like
He was like, "It should have been Gone with." He's like, "What about Gone with the
He
Wind?"
said-
Yeah,
he
that-
said
that
Gone with
about
the
Gone
Wind.
with the
this
Wind.
movie from like 30 years
Unironically.
ago.
Roaring applause about slavery.
What the
and,
fuck?
Because Gone with the Wind has clips of Birth of a Nation in it and that movie's like literally a white supremacy.
Yeah, I
movie.
thought Gone with the Wind was a white supremacy movie.
Well, it's not as bad because it is. Birth of a Nation was like the older movie about like the KKK and like them being like the protagonist.
Because I remember in Black Klansman they
We
watched Gone with the
yeah,
Wind.
we watched Gone with the Wind. No, but it was a.
Insane.
I'm surprised you hadn't seen it, Kellyanne. The
Yeah.
tweet, not the movie. Not Gone with the Wind.
I haven't seen it, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, it was actually like very recently too. So I was like, damn.
Could he even figure out what Parasite was?
No,
about,
and then
though?
someone
Like,
who
does he
someone
barely
know?
figured it out.
someone retweeted it. Or someone replied, and they were like, "It makes sense that Trump doesn't understand a movie that optimizes how the rich don't have like a struggle or some shit like that."
I mean,
That's
I
what
saw.
I said. I said that in the chat. Like,
Did you say that?
when you sent it? And he's
Oh.
because his
There was
his-
like a
he said like he literally said like I don't get it.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I was like, of course he doesn't get it. Like that makes.
Oh yeah, I
perfect
think
sense.
you said
Oh,
yeah.
I saw a reply that was like Trump didn't get it because he can't read, but
I saw that. Yeah, I think that's what I
That
was.
also makes
But I was
sense.
like, he literally epitomizes the Kim family, like,
yeah, probably.
or the Park family.
Yeah. More evil.
All right.
How about those primaries?
Let's move away from Trump.
Politics
But,
in general.
Everyone comment on who you're voting for.
Another
He just
idea
won
that-
Nevada, or not Nevada, Vermont.
Yeah, he just.
he took Nevada, right?
He took
Or
Nevada.
no, was it Nevada?
It was
Nevada.
Yeah.
He took Nevada, yeah.
Bernie's won Nevada.
Cool.
You're gonna
Alright.
cut up the fan base if we start.
Yeah.
talking
We
about politics.
can't talk
I'm
about
just stating
politics.
objective facts right
No,
now.
I'm-
Bernie's
nah,
one of
I'm
Nevada.
just saying.
All right. Moving on. The idea of hope, which is something that Brian talked about, but
Instead
it
of
was a
hope.
different idea. It was a different thing that I was gonna talk about. You talked about hope as in the levels and the half basement,
Yeah.
but I talked about it in terms of like the Scholar's Rock, which is what they gave him at the beginning of the movie. So I think when Min
Very
is
metaphorical.
very metaphorical.
So metaphorical.
I'm about to talk about how metaphorical it is. When his friend, I think his name is Min, gives him the rock,
It was me.
he says that the rock is a charm for wealth and good fortune, which in
Says-
itself
he
is
says material wealth specifically.
and he said this
Yeah.
is ironic to begin with because the family needs both, and this rock is giving them neither.
Tea.
But hope is portrayed in this movie as like kind of like a false reassurance that like it's encouraging, but if anything, it's not gonna last, and it's pretty worthless like to begin with. So Kevin carries this rock around like during the flood and stuff like this, and I think this is representing him holding on to hope. And at the end, when the housekeeper's husband like bashes his like head in with the rock, like this represents his loss of hope. So I think that's what the Scholar's Rock means. This is why it's metaphorical.
I did remember that, like, she killed him with a rock.
It
And the
was-
rock.
I do remember we kept trying to figure out like,
What it meant.
What the rock
yeah,
meant.
what does the rock mean?
I think it
bro?
means hope, but
is
that's
good, yeah. I mean, whilst he's literally clinging to hope.
Yeah.
Because when he
sleeps-
gave him the
sleeps with
rock,
hope.
like, at the
He
same
sleeps with
time
hope.
that
Okay.
he presented the opportunity
I
to
know a girl
Tyr.
named Hope, so this
Oh.
Is
Was
this
sleeping with
sensitive
her.
for Brian?
He's sleeping with hope. No, because he was like, I sleep with the rock.
But yeah, he gave him the rock at least around the same time that he like told him about the
Yeah.
family. Like
symbol of
gave him
opportunity.
the
He gave
yeah,
him
like
hope,
that's when the
and he
opportunity
gave him
started.
hope. Yeah. I think it is funny how like, what do you think Min's reaction is when
he comes
back?
home.
Yeah.
The
He's
family
like,
he's been
"What the
tutoring is in
fuck?"
disarray. His
Half
friend
the-
is brainless.
His friend is
damaged.
brain dead,
His friend was
dad
like,
is like
dating the
an-
girl that he wanted to marry to.
Yeah.
Yeah, his dad is like a felon now. Like this family's like half dead. Like
The timeline for this movie is very like fast
no,
too.
'cause
Like it's
the
like
last
all like in a,
scene, yeah.
I don't know how much time goes between them adding the family in. I assume it's like weeks or something, but
It's
um,
all one night and
well,
the next day
Where,
for like
where
the
did
next.
he go, man?
He
London
went
or
to
something.
London or
US.
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 He was
Yeah.
only gone for like 3
Rock.
months. He said though, 3 weeks.
Yeah, because I was trying to remember how long he said he would be gone. 'cause
It was,
this
like,
all
max
happened in
3
that
months.
time frame.
I think it was a few months. It was like, but yeah.
So you think Min's come back by the end of the movie?
So what do we think it means that what's his face was all brain dead by the end of it? Kevin.
Kevin. I don't know. He's brain dead. That's what. No.
Was
I
he
feel like
brain dead? I thought he just
Well, he just said like
came back from brain trauma.
he like laughed at stuff now and like.
he's like the Joker now.
He's not
He
brain
has to
dead.
laugh.
No, obviously he wasn't brain dead. I did. Yeah, he was.
Traumatized.
There
But
is
he had
definitely
brain
some
damage. He did
symbolic
have
meaning.
damage.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it means. I couldn't come up with a.
I feel like it means that like the rich, like once they, sort of like.
Have their way with you.
Well, yeah, like they like diminish your fight response. So then like you fight back, and then you realize that
It's
they've torn you
yeah.
down, and then it's just easier to be oblivious and to laugh at things that cause you pain
It's like that one
because you
movie
can't cry.
with the. It's like that one book.
Jesus.
It's like
I
that.
like
Wait,
that
what's
movie.
that one book though? That one book with
Thank you.
with the dude. Fuck. We
Oh,
read
I
it.
love that book.
We read it in English, and his name was like really weird.
You gotta give me more.
Yeah.
than that.
Fuck. And
We
it was
read
like
a
about
book in
this,
English?
it was about dystopian
Getting a
society.
name?
19
54.
or yeah, and there's
1984.
Fahrenheit 451.
No, it wasn't Fahrenheit. Was it? What was 1984?
Was it the
That's the Big Brother
Kafka
one.
book? The where he turned
Metamorphosis.
into a beetle.
No.
I thought it would
What
turn
the
into
heck?
something
1984 is
else,
the Big
but-
Brother
The
one.
beetle bug.
It was. Wait, was it 1984? What was the dude's name in 1984?
I loved 1984.
What,
I
what,
read it
what
like
are you?
5
What
What
is
was
the
the
book
main
about?
character's
You gotta
name?
tell me what it's
Yeah,
about.
girl.
Like,
Give us
It
a
was
plot.
well, like he's in love with this girl. Like they live in
It's
a.
nice.
yeah, that's-
1984.
we'll keep on
Yeah.
going.
I'm gonna guess.
Keep on going. There's a lot
Then
of
he's in
books
love with
where
that
guys in love
girl,
with a
and like the
woman.
government's like super controlling and stuff.
1984.
And then no, and then he like refuses to comply, and then they like
Yes.
brainwash him and everything.
That's
Yeah.
1984.
And then at the
And
end,
it takes place in 1984.
yeah.
Oh wait. I don't want to get way off topic here.
Here we go.
But you reminded me of the book where the with the three like oracles or whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Give
Keep on
The
going.
Night Before Christmas.
No. There's like
Wait,
Three
wait.
Stooges.
No. There's like the book where they know if you're gonna they arrest people with thought crimes.
Oh, fuck! I
Because
know what
of
you're
the
talking about.
oracles like see like when murders
I
are gonna
don't-
happen like days in advance, and then they arrest people because they like
Oh.
Is that a book? I thought it was.
or it was a movie, but I think it was
Oh.
also a book.
No, I
Is it
don't-
Watchmen?
No, it's not Watchmen. It's not Watchmen.
But it's
In
pretty cool.
1984, they had Thought Police as well.
Thought Police was.
That's what I was
No, but
thinking.
this movie is like these oracles see people's thoughts like 5 days in advance, and they'll see like this person's gonna kill someone in 5 days. So then you get arrested even though you didn't kill anyone because you were gonna kill someone in 5 days.
I've never heard of that before.
It's pretty cool. Sorry to get off topic.
But yeah,
Yeah, we're like
Girish,
way off topic
1984
now.
is like a good sort of like what I meant. Like if you revolt.
Law and Oracle? No.
No.
Minority Report?
No, I don't think it was that.
So-
Anyway,
Lucidity?
I'll look. You guys talk.
Okay.
All right, we're like very off topic here, so
might have to cut this
I'll
off.
yeah, I'll move to the last question I had. Who do you think is the real parasite of the movie?
The audience.
I think no.
The real parasite was the friends we made along the way.
Cut that out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Please.
I think the argument could be made for any of the three groups of people:
I think that's
the
the whole
Kims,
point.
the Parks, and the original housemaid and her husband. They all are parasitic to one another.
Wait, how are the rich people parasites?
Because they can't function on
yeah,
their
they can't
own.
function
Yeah.
without the
That's true.
poor.
I think we talked about this like right after the
Mhm.
movie. Yeah. You figure out the movie well?
It's Minority Report.
I was good.
It's a good movie though.
They
Yeah.
can't
We
function.
could watch
If they're
that one.
both parasitic to each other, it's a mutualistic.
No. We
Symbiotic.
talked about this because they all need each other to survive. Yeah.
Yeah, parasite is when a parasite
But
relationship is when one.
They all
benefits
benefit.
and
Yeah.
one
So it's
goes
actually
down.
mutualism.
Mutualism.
Hey, rename the movie
Come
right
in.
now.
Mutualism.
Mutual light.
Doesn't have the same ring to it. I
It's
don't know
not a
why.
thing.
It's not
It's
a
not a
word. I don't
word.
think.
You can't have one mutual light without the other as well. Like there is-
Mutual lights.
Alright.
Symbiotic relationships. The movie.
All right, I'm gonna end this category with this quote that I found from a Bong Joon-ho interview. It's a little bit long, but it kind of encapsulates everything that we've talked about. And this is when someone asks him to like describe the movie for them. So the quote is, "For people of different circumstances to live together in the same space is not easy. It is increasingly the case in this sad world that humane relationships based on coexistence or symbiosis can't hold, and one group is pushed into a parasitic relationship with another. In the midst of such a world, who can point their finger at a struggling family locked in a fight for survival and call them parasites? It is not like they were parasites from the start. They are neighbors, friends, and colleagues who have merely been pushed to the edge of a precipice. As a depiction of ordinary people who fall into unavoidable commotion, this film is a comedy without clowns, a tragedy without villains, all leading to a violent tangle and a headlong plunge down the stairs. You are all invited to this unstoppably fierce tragic comedy. I think the second last sentence, a comedy without clowns, a tragedy without villains, like that was a really good description of this movie. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the point I made. It's like, did the parks...
There's
are
no
they
real
really
villains.
The
Yeah.
bad guys.
Yeah.
Society.
Tragic comedy is a very interesting genre of movies.
It's kind of fun to say.
Yeah.
Tragic comedy.
Trash
Comedic
com.
tragedy.
Tragic
You
comedy.
guys trying to watch a tragic comedy?
Trying to watch a tragic
A
comedy.
good trash com.
This one had romance in it too, so it's really like
A tragic com.
a trash rom-com, if you will.
Tragic coming down.
A rom tragic com.
Alright.
Alright.
Overrated, right?
Underrated first.
Oh,
So, I said
Oh my God, I thought that was over for a second. Wait, how
Rated?
many more? Wait, I'm just
we have the last two categories.
Okay,
Underrated
it's
and
just
overrated.
like-
We've been
okay.
this is a very
It's a
long,
long
one,
podcast.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was like. I
It's
thought it was
good.
over.
aptly so.
Apt.
Apt.
aptly rated.
So most underrated, I said all the symbolism, foreshadowing. There's a lot that we didn't even talk about, so I'll mention some that I don't think we've mentioned so far. In the beginning of the movie, they said 1/4 of the pizza boxes that they made were ruined. This is foreshadowing that one of the family members is going to die, like the daughter, or be like ruined.
Wow.
Oh, wait, that's not even right though. Like 3/4 of the family's ruined because
Well, one's dead.
I mean,
one's
one is
dead,
dead.
one's like living in a basement, the other one's
I
like
hit Will so
brain
hard.
damage.
That was like that's a lot. That's going from like the first line of the movie
Yeah, that
to
is
the very
legitimately
end of
the
the movie.
beginning of the
We'll
movie.
just hit like a blunt. I was like, whoa.
Also in the beginning of the movie, the family gets sprayed with insecticides. This is symbolistic of parasites.
Oh, that's pretty obvious one I didn't see though.
Yeah.
No, I feel like
I didn't
thought
notice.
I made a comment, but
I
maybe
don't.
I didn't.
I don't remember you saying it, but you might
Okay.
have. The movie, the park boy, all of his mental illness and drawings stem from the fact that he saw the housekeeper's husband coming out of the basement and he thought he was a ghost. So if you look at any of his drawings, you'll notice that like there's like eyes watching him and stuff like that.
Oh, didn't you say there's always like something in this? Like she was like, oh, you noticed this in like the bottom left corner.
That was all bullshit.
Yeah, no,
that
but
was Jessica.
I know Jessica said that, but like, was there something in the bottom
I
left corner?
I think she was just
Was
bullshitting
it like
them.
the dude?
But also another part of that is that he saw him come out of the basement and he didn't do anything, and that's like the rich seeing the poor, like innocent eyes, and he didn't know
Oh.
any better, and he saw him and he signed
Yeah,
help, and
yeah.
he knew Morse code,
Even in
and
the end,
he
yeah.
didn't help. So that was just like it goes with
Wait,
it.
you mean when he saw the guy in the basement?
And he heard
Like
the Morse
he
code.
saw all the
Oh, he saw-
lights going off,
I thought
and the boy was a Cub Scout, so he
The boy wrote it down. He,
He
said
wrote like
send help.
help me. He like misspelled it. I don't know if that
Yeah,
was him
but
being
I don't
dumb and not
But
polite.
I
or-
don't know. I
Dumbass
think he
little
knew, and I think he didn't help
Dumbass.
on
Yeah,
purpose.
I thought the movie could have taken so many different turns.
Yeah,
I
there's,
didn't
like,
mention that.
We were guessing the end like way differently from.
How could you guess that?
Yeah.
end?
I don't.
That's what makes a good movie great.
Us said the Kim family crawling around their house to get out. This represents cockroaches. Last one. The names of the families are Kim and Park. This could come from the leaders of North and South Korea, Kim Jong-un and former President Park Geun-hye.
I thought, aren't those just like the most popular South
They
Korean
might be
the most popular
names.
So like
For
they
sure.
just generic just to represent like generic
Yeah.
shit.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting that like he made the Kims the poor family and Park's the rich one.
There's,
North
Young
Korea.
Moon.
there's another point that you just brought up that reminded me. In the scene when they're all getting drunk and like celebrating before the housekeeper comes, the wife says something like, "Oh, if your father actually got in a fight, you know he'd run away like a cockroach or something like that. That's like the first thing he'd do."
Yeah.
And then fast forward all the way to the last scene where he ends up killing the dad, and then the
Runs
first thing he
away
does,
like a
he runs
cockroach.
away like a cockroach and hides in the basement.
Like a cockroach.
So, just
Good
another
point.
thing.
Good point. I already talked about Mr. Kim and the Jessica Park affair, so that was in my underrated. But last thing I'll say is all the sets and special effects were amazing. So this entire set was actually made in a huge water tank because of the flooding scenes. They couldn't like do that stuff anywhere else. So like all the poor scenes, like from the poor people areas, that was all in a water tank.
God damn.
Yeah.
Like a big just.
Yeah, huge
bathtub.
water tank. Yeah. All of the architecture was built from scratch, and some of the designs that they made for like the rich people houses were made by set designers, and they were so unrealistic. The actual architect said, "Which idiot designed this?"
Oh,
So,
the house.
Yeah,
itself?
the house.
It looked pretty modern to me. I don't know. Like maybe I don't know rich people architecture, but maybe that was the point.
Things were actually borrowed from like actual mansions. Bong Joon-ho said they borrowed a trash can that cost over $2,300. So he was like,
That's
"Who
so
needs
funny.
this like rich thing?" Like, but it was funny for him. Yeah.
Did
Any
they
other?
win the Oscars for best set? Is
They
that
did
even
not. I
happen?
think that was 1917.
1917.
That was a
Yeah.
good one though. Yeah, makes sense. No, didn't Once Upon a Time win?
I don't remember.
Set design.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, after hearing you say all
Maybe.
that, I'm like,
I think Once
wow,
Upon a
was
Time
on
won.
point. But again, I don't know.
All right. Any other underrated you guys want to say?
I don't like. I never really thought about symbolism for this, but just like when the rich people house, like the like yard outside the living room, and then I think they had the similar yard outside like the master bedroom maybe, or like yeah, you know the yard outside the living
Yeah.
room, like where the
Yeah.
party
Talking
was,
Yeah.
yeah.
about, like, the,
But then maybe I don't know if they
was
had
it the
like
backyard or the front.
I thought it was the
yard?
same yard.
I didn't know like. Because I thought there was a scene where they were in the master bedroom and they were looking out to the yard too. Maybe they were in the living room and I just misremembered. But either way, the yard was like so perfect with like the trees and it was so
grass.
green.
Yeah.
And like I don't know if it's. I mean, obviously it probably stood for something. Just like at a base level, just like how perfect the rich have it. But it was like every time I saw it, it just like hit me. I was like, that's so
People would kill for a yard.
Yeah,
that good,
I
right?
would.
Like, I know, like, whoa. I think I don't know if this is underrated, but I really liked the actual scene. The scariest scene, in my opinion, was when they showed the flashback of
The dude like sticking his head.
his
That was so
eyes.
scary.
I actually was like
Yeah.
terrified from that.
Wait, what scene?
when
When,
he's
like,
talking about how he
flashback,
saw
The
ghosts.
basement door
Oh, yeah.
opens
Remember
and he's
when
like
he
walking
it
out.
showed,
And he's like-
I don't know like what he did to like look that messed up, but
Lived
yeah.
in the basement for months.
Years.
Years.
I guess.
Yeah, damn. Yeah, I guess symbolism was underrated. All right, time to namesake.
Is that gonna get picked up?
Our most overrated. I do not have a lot for this. I only had 2 points. So I said I was not a huge fan of Kevin's laughing in the hospital. I didn't think it was like awful, but I'm not sure the direction they wanted to go with this. It seemed like just like you said, like a Joker copy. I wrote that too, kind of just like the ideas behind Joker, but none of the like build up to it, like the laughing through madness and stuff like that after tragedy. Not a fan of that.
I don't think. See, here's the thing. This movie literally had like I knew nothing about it, so I had no hype about this movie, and it was also really good. So it's pretty hard for it to be overrated, in my opinion. Most
I'm
of
just
the
saying
stuff,
overrated is now stuff that you didn't like that no one said yet.
I like this movie a lot, so
Any part that you didn't like?
any plate that I didn't. Well, I did give it like a 92 or something. So
I didn't like the bloodbath scene. I mean, like I guess it was necessary to make a point, but it was like so out of the blue and so brutal.
that's true, yeah.
And it just like made me uncomfortable. It felt like it shifted the whole tone of the movie, and then it was very distinct before and after. Like before, when with all of the stuff going down, and then the event of the bloodbath, and then after of Mr. Kim living in the basement. It just like disjointed the movie, and I'm sure it was like an intentional choice, and that's how I'm supposed to feel. I just didn't like it. It felt
I
very
thought the
icky.
sex scene was kind of unnecessary.
I do wonder why they.
It was
added
kind of funny, but like also like you don't need
why
more
was it
comedy.
there? Like it.
Yeah, I was like,
It was literally
It
just like a
could-
funny scene. It's
what-
like, oh,
yeah.
like
don't
these
think
guys.
he
Are...
was trying to make it a funny scene.
Well, I was gonna say
What
that.
could it have symbolized?
And then
though?
after that, like when they were like crawling out and like on the ground, like and they were just laying on the couch and they're just like on. I know it was dark, but like if like that was the one time during the movie I was like, this doesn't seem super realistic because like they're just like on the ground like right next to these people, and then like the dad gets up right or something like someone not gets up but like he's awake for a moment and they're just like on the ground right under.
Oh, like not even under the table.
I thought maybe not, but I know like he's
Yeah.
like shining the light and they're on the table like the whole scene. It's just like how do you not like
They
they're
actually-
right there.
Interestingly, they did build a coffee table that was big enough to put all 3 bodies under, so I thought that was interesting. But I do agree that like
What was the
the
point of
whole-
it?
I mean, I understand like the cockroach thing. Like,
Yeah.
and they were
Yeah.
stuck there. Like,
No,
it
but
makes
the sex
just
scene.
like
Yeah, but why?
the sex scene specifically.
Well, I just didn't like the whole scene. It's like they would have like for sure they would have seen them somehow.
That goes back
It was
to the
very uncomfortable.
They can't see the porn.
No, I thought it was like, I thought some shit was about to happen with the boys. Like, why are there people under the table, Dad? And he's like, wait, what the fuck?
Like, symbolism could be symbolism, but like in real life they would have seen that.
The boy's like, Dad, why is there people on their table?
Yeah, something. I mean, they were laying like
Stop trying to bang your mom
4
here.
feet next to them. Like that table is not like it didn't have brick walls. You know, I mean, you could see under the table. There's human bodies there. Like you, like even if I couldn't see it all, pitch black, and there was a human body laying right next to me, I feel like I could feel it. You know, especially if they started
Really?
moving. Like you feel the presence of other human beings when they're near you.
Not when you're like playing hide and seek or something.
Not when you're fucking your wife.
Like, yeah, like I mean, if you're distracted with other
I mean,
things,
you never
like,
noticed me in the bed.
But then they stop and they lay down and like they're done.
I admit, while like it's unrealistic. Like, okay, during sex, okay, yeah, sure, maybe you're not the most.
They didn't have
yeah.
sex the whole scene.
No,
They
but
stopped having
afterwards,
sex.
I agree. Yeah, afterwards, like you just chilled there, like.
Plus, if we're getting really technical, guys are supposed to have heightened
You have that
senses
post
when they
nut.
finish.
Yeah, you have the post nut
Yeah.
clarity. Yeah.
Post nut.
To drop a technical term here, the post nut clarity.
Thank you. Brother foot.
Okay.
Alright.
I think that's a good statement.
Alright, it's been
My
overrated.
my other point for overrated was I think that the housekeeper's husband should have been in the movie more. Like you said, that one scene that he had where he came out was the scariest. I think if they had more of that, that would have been better. That was the only thing.
Yeah. He was just spooky and unsettling to watch. Like when he was looking up at the posters of Mr. Park and he was like
Yeah,
we love
praising
him,
yeah.
respect, and it was just
Oh, it would
like
have been
it was
so much
just
better
like,
than if the
how I
Puck's names
assumed.
were the Kims and the Kim. Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
then you
it's
could be
like
oh,
how I
Kim
assumed
Jong.
But that was also definitely heavy symbolism for like
worship him.
the
The
poor,
poor
like
worship the rich.
worshiping the rich because like
Yeah,
the
they're
rich
our
make it
heroes.
seem like they're giving to them, but
Mhm.
because they don't know any better, they don't know a better
Exactly.
life.
He did a good job playing a mentally deranged person
Yeah.
who's
He was
lived in a
very
basement for 4
unsettling.
years.
That was like literally like how I imagine like North Korean like society, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
like kissing Kim Jong Un posters and like
Same. They're all completely impoverished and they
Respect.
worship him
yeah,
like he's a
because
god.
they're forced to and like that's all they know. Like this guy gives us our life, but little do they know they're taking it all away.
Wait, so I don't think I ever understood why he was in the basement, other than the fact that he was living off
Free.
them.
They were
He was
evading
hiding from
taxes.
taxes and
so-
debt.
That's what he was hiding from.
He was hiding from
They
debt.
were homeless. Yeah.
It's
you're,
also kind of interesting because like he was hiding there because he was like wanted
Yeah,
for,
no,
for money, you know, like.
yeah.
But then in the end,
Oh yeah, I
Mr.
remember
Kim
actually now the loan sharks. Yeah.
hides in the basement because he's wanted for murder.
Yeah.
People
Which
are
is a lot
hiding.
worse, but like they're both hiding from
Yeah, the law.
the law.
Alright, cool. Does anyone have anything about the movie you want to say?
Final thoughts.
This is
Long
probably our longest
podcast.
podcast,
We
but
could talk forever about this movie.
yeah, and we got
so
very
much
off topic in many
Yeah.
places. So, but I like it was a good change of pace. This is our first foreign movie that we've done, so
And also,
Canadians.
it's like the first super, I
Yeah.
feel like, deep movie that we've
Yeah.
watched too. Like, because
Yeah,
Dead
yeah.
Poet Society, like, is
Yeah, it's awesome.
Not as
not as
substantial.
much of a thinker movie, and that's the closest we've come. It's nice to talk about, like, do we blame the rich or it's so topical these days, and there's no one right answer. And
I think that's probably why it won so many Oscars, because it's relevant now.
yeah, for sure, it's
That's
definitely a
usually how it goes,
popularity
yeah.
contest.
But it's also just so super.
But it
well
makes me think, like, is being ignorant insensitive? You know, like just talking about it makes me enjoy the movie more. So, yeah.
Comment down below. It's being ignorant and sensitive. Vote now on your
Like and
Is
devices.
this
subscribe.
going on YouTube?
No, there is no way to comment below.
Spoiler.
Text me.
Text Sujay.
Email Girish at Ganesh.
Hey, don't give
Alright. Otherwise, thank you for listening to our episode on Parasite. Please continue to follow us on Spotify or
Give us those 5-star reviews.
yeah, and we'll have more movies for you soon.